The bass was pounding through the soles of my boots, deep, rhythmic, hypnotic. The kind of beat that made your spine tingle and your heart forget whatever the hell it was aching over. The club was alive. Neon lights flashed pink and violet across the ceiling. The air was thick with perfume, sweat, and alcohol. It was Friday night in Manhattan, and for once, I wasn't the girl stuck behind a desk from 9 to 5. I was the girl in a black fitted crop top, leather skirt clinging to my hips, dancing like the world hadn't just gutted me 2 months ago. My curls bounced freely as I moved, sticking to my neck in the heat, but I didn't care. "Elara," I shouted over the music, laughing as she swung her hips dramatically in front of me. "You're actually offbeat." She flipped her hair and grinned, pulling me into a spin.
Whatever, Ashwood. Let loose for once.
And I did. For the first time since moving to the city, I let myself feel the moment. Our little group from the office, Adam, Jules, and Tori, had claimed a corner near the dance floor, drinks in hand, smiles wide. I wasn't close with them yet, but tonight, they felt like mine. Even Adam, who was just a little too comfortable placing his hand on my lower back when we danced. "Careful," I warned with a smirk when his hand slid a bit lower than it should have. He held his hands up like a guilty kid.
"I swear, Raven, I slipped."
"Sure you did?" I raised a brow, but I was still smiling. I didn't mind the attention until I caught Elara's sudden stillness out the corner of my eye. She leaned into my ear, her voice a whisper now.
Don't freak out, but Patrick's here.
My heart slammed against my ribs. I turned, slow, like I was peeling a bandage off my own skin. And there he was. Patrick Cross. Behind the bar, wearing a fitted black t-shirt that stretched across his arms, veins crawling up his forearms like roots. His hair was a little longer, messier, that same raven black that once curled around my fingers. He was shaking a cocktail shaker with that familiar scowl until his eyes met mine. That's when my stomach dropped. He didn't blink, didn't smile, just stared like I'd interrupted a memory. Like seeing me laugh with another man was a punch to his ego he didn't see coming. I knew that look. He was furious. "Elara," I swallowed hard. "Why didn't you tell me he worked here?"
I didn't know,
she said quickly.
I swear. But Raven, he's staring like
I owe him something.
Exactly.
I could have walked away. Should have. But I didn't. My legs moved before my brain could catch up. I needed to prove something to him, maybe to myself. That I wasn't scared of him anymore. That he couldn't just glare me into submission like he used to. He was pouring vodka into a glass when I reached the bar. His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. I did. "Hi." Patrick looked up slowly. His voice was smooth but cold.
"Didn't think you'd be back in my world so soon.
"I didn't know you worked here."
And yet here you are, wrapped around some guy in front of me."
He leaned forward, hands braced on the counter, eyes narrowed.
"Is that what New York does to you, turns you cheap?"
I blinked. The insult slapped hard, but I refused to show it. "Excuse me, I'm out with coworkers." The shaker slammed down.
"Step outside."
"No." He glared at me, pulling me through the crowd like he owned me. Out the side exit into a narrow alleyway behind the building. The cool air hit my bare arms, but it wasn't enough to calm the storm in my chest. Patrick turned sharply, his hand still wrapped tight around my wrist.
"So, what is this, Raven? You come to my place of work to dance with some guy right in front of me?"
"I didn't know you worked here." I snapped, yanking my arm free. "You think I planned this? You think I miss you that much?" He stepped closer.
"Don't play dumb. You knew exactly what you were doing in there."
I laughed sharp, bitter. "You seriously think everything I do is about you?"
"I know you.
His voice cracked, just slightly.
You don't move on that fast."
"You don't own me." That did it. His eyes darkened, jaw clenched. And then his hands were on my waist, yanking me against him, his mouth crashing down on mine. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't loving. It was punishment. I gasped, shocked. My body went stiff as his fingers dug into my sides like he had something to prove. For a split second, a memory stirred of nights where that kiss meant something. Where it came after laughter, not accusations. But that was a lifetime ago. I pushed him back with both palms, breath ragged. My voice shook. What the hell was that, Patrick? He didn't answer. Just stared. Behind him, the club's side door creaked open. Elara's face peeked out, her expression twisted in horror. And beside her, Adam. Watching, confused. My heart cracked a little right then. Not because I cared about Adam, but because I hated how small Patrick made me feel. Still, after everything. I turned back to him, voice low and shaking. You don't get to touch me like that. Patrick's eyes flickered, maybe guilt, maybe regret. I couldn't tell.
Go. Now.
He muttered. So I did. I walked past Alara and Adam without a word, out into the Manhattan night. Alone. But stronger. Because this time I wasn't crying. This time I left before he could break me. The club lights had barely faded in my rearview mirror, but they still throbbed behind my eyes like a warning. My hands gripped the steering wheel harder than they needed to, my knuckles pale against the leather. The hum of the tires on asphalt was the only thing keeping me steady. Patrick's taste still lingered on my lips. A kiss that didn't ask. A grip that didn't let go. I should have slapped him. Should have screamed. But I'd frozen like I always did when the past reached out and grabbed me by the throat. My breath caught, and I blinked hard. Damn it, I whispered, fingers twitching. He used to say he loved me. Madly. As if madness was something beautiful. But it wasn't. It was rage in the middle of the night. It was bruises hidden beneath long sleeves. It was pretending for too long that love and control were the same thing. I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't the girl who took his calls or covered for his tantrums. I was the girl who packed a duffel bag, kissed her mama goodbye with a trembling smile, and drove 13 hours to a city that didn't know her name. New York was supposed to be my fresh start. A quiet job. A small apartment. Nights with Alara watching dumb movies in our pajamas. Not run-ins with old ghosts working behind bars and acting like they still owned me. The air in the car felt heavier now. Thick. Like something was pressing on my chest. I glanced at the clock past midnight. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat, lighting up with a text. Alara.
Are you okay? Call me.
I should have called her. I should have gone back. But just then, a flash of white up ahead cut across the blacktop. I slammed the brakes. Jesus Christ. The tires screeched, my heart slammed into my ribs, and the car jerked sideways just short of the crossing gate. I blinked, breath caught in my throat, and that's when I saw him. A man. Lying across the damn train tracks. He wasn't moving. I jumped out, my boots hitting gravel with a crunch. The wind whipped my hair around my face, cold and fast. I didn't think. I just ran. Hey, I called, stumbling over the uneven ground. Hey, get up! He didn't budge. Closer now I saw it, his wedding suit, wrinkled and smeared with dirt, but still sharp in the way heartbreak always is. Black tux. Dress shoes scuffed. Bow tie hanging loose like he'd either been in a rush or a fight. His face was pale under the moonlight, lips parted just enough to look like he'd tried to speak. A streak of dried blood curved across his temple, like punctuation on a sentence that never got finished. My stomach turned. Come on, I murmured, crouching beside him. His body was warm, breathing, but barely. You don't get to die like this, not tonight. The gate alarm started to ring, that metallic clang that makes your skin crawl. Red lights blinked on either side of us. The low growl of a train rumbled in the distance. Hell no, I hissed, sliding my arms under his, muscles straining. That's what a latent wolf could do when someone's life was on the line. He was dead weight. Broad-shouldered, easily over 6 feet. Muscles like a linebacker. I dug my heels in, sweat breaking down my back despite the cold. Move, damn it, move. I dragged him off the tracks just as the train roared by, loud and furious, shaking the ground beneath me. We collapsed in a heap beside my car, the rush of adrenaline crashing like a wave. I looked down, his eyes were shut, lashes still, like he was just sleeping off something small. But his stillness was loud, deafening. My chest tightened. "You're okay," I muttered. "You're safe." I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, cradling it between my ear and shoulder as I ran my hands over his chest, checking for breaks, blood, anything. His heartbeat thumped strong under my fingers.
911, what's your emergency?
I just pulled a man off the train tracks. He's unconscious, bleeding. I'm near the Jackson Avenue crossing. They said help was on the way. I barely heard the rest. The stranger groaned. I looked down, his eyes fluttered open. He looked at me like I was a dream. He grabbed my wrist.
Did you save me?
"I didn't let you die," I whispered. "There's a difference." He blinked, then his eyes rolled back, out cold again. The ambulance came quick. Red and white lights bathed the street, painting him like a ghost. They loaded him onto a stretcher. One of the paramedics asked me a million questions, none of which I had answers to. I don't know his name. I just found him like that. He was wearing a wedding suit, so maybe he ran. They let me ride with them to the hospital. I sat beside him, my fingers trembling in my lap, heart still racing like it hadn't gotten the memo the danger had passed. He looked peaceful now. Still handsome. Strong jawline, a faint scar beneath his right eye, and a soft wave to his dark brown hair. He smelled like cologne and dirt and something wild I couldn't place. I glanced at his hand, no wedding ring. Just clenched fingers and a bruised knuckle. Maybe he didn't run. Maybe someone let him fall. The nurse took him back, and I stood alone under those blinding fluorescent lights, hugging my arms to my chest, suddenly aware of how much everything in my life had changed in the span of an hour. First Patrick. Then this stranger. Fate didn't just knock it, barged in without asking.
You okay, honey?
A nurse asked me. I nodded slowly. I think I just saved someone's life.
You sure did.
She said with a soft smile.
You can wait here. They'll update you.
I sank into the chair outside the ER doors. The buzz of the hallway blurred behind me. My hands still shook. And somewhere inside that hospital room, a man I didn't know was breathing because I showed up. 1 second, I was driving home with the windows cracked open, letting North Carolina's night air slap me awake. The next, I was dragging a man in a silk tuxedo off train tracks, screaming into the wind, praying the train's lights were farther than they looked. And now, here I was.
Mrs. Greystone?
The nurse's voice sliced through the fog in my head. I blinked. "I what?"
You're listed here.
She said gently, tapping a clipboard against her hip.
Emergency intake. Spouse field says Raven Greystone.
I stared blankly at her. My lips parted, but nothing came out. My stomach flipped as if someone had yanked the ground from under me. "Mrs. Greystone." I almost laughed. Almost. There wasn't time to explain the truth when I got to the ER. They were shouting codes, calling for surgery, wheeling him away so fast I barely caught his name on the chart, Jackson Greystone. I'd given my name because they asked. That's it, just Raven. But someone must have assumed. Maybe it was the way I clung to his hand when he was wheeled in, still gripping his bloody cuff like it meant something. The nurse smiled softly.
It's all right. You don't have to talk. Just wanted to let you know the family is arriving. Should I send them in?
Family? I straightened in the plastic chair. My heart stuttered. I hadn't even processed he had a family. I figured what? That he was some tragic lone groom running from a broken altar? Sure, I said. My voice barely registered over the thudding in my ears. She turned, and before I could call her back or change my mind or even breathe, the door cracked open, and in walked 3 people who looked like they'd just stepped off the cover of a Southern Estate magazine. The first man, older, graying at the temples, walked with a cane and an air of authority that filled the room like a thunderclap. His eyes scanned me once, sharp and assessing, before softening just enough. His suit was impeccable, expensive, and dark enough to match the bags under his eyes. Beside him, a woman in her 50s with perfectly curled blonde hair and pearls at her throat clutched a handkerchief like it was a lifeline. She didn't speak, just pressed trembling fingers to her lips when she saw me. But it was the third man who stopped my heart cold. He was younger, barely older than me, maybe early 20s, but taller than Jackson, with a broader chest and shoulders like they'd been carved out of granite. Same sharp cheekbones, same full mouth, same dark lashes fanning over piercing green eyes. Twins. My throat dried out. He was staring at me like I was a ghost. Caroline? The woman whispered, voice cracking. Caroline? Oh God. I felt the color drain from my face. They think I'm her. The her Jackson was supposed to marry. No, my voice faltered. The younger man took a step forward.
Brad.
He said automatically, holding out a hand.
I'm Brad. Jackson's younger twin.
His fingers were warm, rough, and slow to let go. I hated the flicker of something unfamiliar that sparked up my arm when our skin touched. It wasn't the time.
And this is our father, Mr. Greystone, the alpha of the Greystone pack. And our mother, Lillian, the Luna of our pack.
He glanced at them, then back at me.
We didn't think we'd meet like this.
I swallowed the lump in my throat. I think before I could finish, Mr. Greystone stepped in, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder.
You saved my boy's life. That makes you family in my book.
My chest caved in slightly. Every word felt like a trap door. I opened my mouth to clarify I'm not Caroline, but then Brad's voice cut in, gentle and curious.
Where were you two headed? I mean, why was he at the tracks?
My eyes flicked to his. Honest. Searching. I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know. Because the truth that I found his brother unconscious, bleeding, and alone would only spiral into more questions. Why was he in a tux? Why didn't she come with him? Why hadn't he told anyone? So I did what panic does best. I froze. And in the silence, Lillian stepped forward and wrapped me in a hug. A hug that smelled like jasmine and high-end perfume and motherly grief. I stiffened, my arms trapped at my sides. Her breath trembled near my ear.
You're so brave, sweetheart. So brave.
Brave. If only they knew. Brad hadn't looked away. His green eyes were studying every twitch in my jaw, every twitch in my fingers as I stood in that white-tiled limbo. Caught between a lie I never told and a truth I didn't know how to speak. But something softened in his gaze, almost like he understood.
Can I show you where they're keeping him?
He asked. I nodded once, slow and careful, my boots echoed against the vinyl floor as we walked. Past grieving families. Past IV poles and vending machines and a kid screaming behind a curtain. The hallway curved into a quieter wing, dimmed lights, softer voices. And then, like lightning cracking a quiet sky, I said it. I'm not Caroline. He didn't flinch, just grabbed my arm and in one fluid move, spun me into a narrow alcove and pinned me against the wall. My back hit cold plaster, and his palm covered my mouth before I could suck in a full breath. His voice was low, so low I felt it in my chest.
I know you're not Caroline.
My eyes widened. I struggled against his grip, but his body was all tension and control, every inch of him like a warning. He was close. Too close. I could smell his cedarwood and storm rain scent. Then why?
Because
He hissed, leaning in.
you're already written into this. They think you're her. They think Jackson married you. And it's keeping our father alive right now.
I yanked free from his hand, shoving his chest with both palms. I'm not a liar. He didn't move. Just looked down at me like I was a challenge he hadn't decided how to solve. I'm a latent, I snapped, chest heaving. You know what that means? My family was cast out. No pack, no protection. We scrape by. I work double shifts just to afford Mama's meds. My little brother, he still thinks he's gonna shift someday. My voice cracked. I wiped at my cheek, angry at myself for being so damn soft. You think I can just keep up this fantasy for your family's convenience? His tone dropped, almost tender.
No. For my father's heart. He had a stroke 2 years ago. Another shock like this, he won't make it. You being here, thinking Jackson chose love over legacy? It's the first time I've seen the old man smile since he lost control of the pack.
I looked up at him, at the weight he wore so effortlessly. Like grief was tailored into his clothes. What are you asking me to do? I whispered.
Stay in the lie. Just for now.
His voice was raw, real.
Help us through this. I'll make sure your family's taken care of. Rent, food, healthcare. I'll even train you, teach you how to shift, how to harness it. You deserve that. And they don't have to know. Not yet.
My heart banged so loud I was scared he could hear it. I don't want your money, I murmured. And I sure as hell don't want your pity. His eyes locked on mine.
It's not pity. It's respect. You saved my brother's life.
I turned my face to the side, tried to catch my breath. The corridor felt too tight, his body too close. But I didn't move away. Why me? I asked, voice low. He gave a broken laugh, the kind that doesn't sound like joy at all.
I don't know. But you're already in this. You may as well stop pretending you're not.
I met his gaze again. This time I didn't look away. His eyes were steel, but something behind them flickered like a match right before it caught fire. I swallowed hard. Okay, I said finally. But you better not screw me over.
I won't.
You already are, I muttered. For a second, neither of us moved. We just breathed chest to chest, two strangers with shared secrets and a mess of consequences between them. Then he leaned in, almost brushing my forehead with his.
Thank you.
His voice was softer now, almost kind. Like the hurricane had passed and left behind something quiet, something broken. He turned and walked away without another word, his broad shoulders tense as if the lie already weighed too much. I followed him, not because I trusted him, but because sometimes survival doesn't wait for clean choices. They called it a fortress, but it didn't look like one. Not on the outside. From the winding driveway, the Greystone estate looked like something out of a magazine. Arched windows, ivy trailing up pale stone walls, and two black iron gates tall enough to block out the sky. But when I stepped inside that house, heart pounding in my throat and a duffel bag hanging off one shoulder, it swallowed me whole. And that's when it started, the ache in my chest I couldn't shake. It wasn't just the guilt. It was the smell of freshly baked rosemary bread coming from the kitchen. The smooth marble floors that clicked under my boots. The warm way Jackson's mom Lillian smiled at me, like she'd waited her whole life to see her son happy. She held my hands and said,
I don't know what we would have done if you hadn't been there, Caroline.
I almost told her then. Right there in the foyer, under the chandelier that looked like it belonged in a museum. But Brad's voice rang in my head, low, firm, raw.
Please. Just for our dad. Just until he's better.
So I smiled, and nodded, and I hated myself for it. Jackson's room was on the 3rd floor. It had thick blackout curtains, a bay window, and the faint scent of cedar and bergamot lingering on the pillows. He lay still as stone, wires trailing from his arms like vines, his dark hair curling against the edges of the bandages on his forehead. His jaw was tense even in sleep, like he was fighting a battle I couldn't see. It wasn't fair, any of it. Not the coma. Not the mistake. Not the way his mother had cried in my arms just yesterday thanking Caroline for being strong. I knelt beside his bed and whispered, "I'm so sorry." I didn't even know him. Not really. I only knew the weight of his body in my arms when I pulled him off those train tracks. I knew the way his fingers twitched, like something inside him refused to let go. He looked like a man who wasn't done living yet. The first night I didn't sleep. I sat beside him in a long hoodie and old leggings, watching his chest rise and fall, memorizing every beep from the monitor. I whispered nonsense to him, memories of North Carolina, how my mom used to bake cornbread with too much butter, how my brother had a gap between his front teeth he refused to fix. "I don't even know your voice," I said into the quiet, "but you know mine now." I didn't expect anything back. Mornings were the hardest. I'd roll out of bed the room I was given down the hall and walk barefoot to his. Sometimes I'd cry in the shower first, so no one would hear. Other times I'd just stare in the mirror, wondering how long before the truth blew everything apart. I'd check his IV, turn his body gently to avoid sores, smooth lotion over his back and shoulders. There was something sacred about it. Something terrifying, too. His body was warm and solid under my hands, and I couldn't pretend he wasn't beautiful. Broad shoulders, lean waist, a scar along his left side that looked recent. Whoever he was before, he'd lived hard. And still, he was someone's son. Someone's brother. Someone's fiancé. I didn't even know her name. Caroline. The real one. The one he'd eloped with. The one I'd accidentally become. The room was dim, all quiet except for the soft hum of the machines around Jackson's bed. He looked peaceful in a way that almost made it easier to forget the weight of the lie pressing down on my chest like a wet wool blanket. I dipped the cloth into warm water, wrung it out until it was just damp, and gently ran it along his jawline. His stubble had grown in dark, coarse, and I had to slow my hands to keep them from shaking. I'd never been Caroline. But I was still here, playing wife, playing nurse, playing the part they all needed.
You missed a spot.
Came a voice from the door, deep and dry. I turned, startled. Brad stood in the frame like a shadow come to life, broad shoulders in a tight black tee, hands tucked in the pockets of his jeans. The man always looked like a storm had dressed him. He stepped into the room and pulled something from his back pocket. A white envelope. I arched an eyebrow, folding the washcloth neatly on the edge of the basin. "You're late."
For what?
"For being human." Brad smirked.
Don't push your luck. Fake wife.
I rolled my eyes, but inside my pulse stuttered. He always had this way of stepping too close, speaking too low. It was infuriating, and God help me, dangerously thrilling. He held out the envelope.
Here. 1 million. Enough?
I stared at it like it might burn me. "You serious?"
Dead.
I took it with careful fingers, the weight of it more emotional than physical. My heart thudded so loud, I swear Jackson's monitor blinked in time with it.
For your mom. Your brother.
Brad said, eyes never leaving mine.
For your sanity.
I swallowed, voice low. I never asked for this much.
No. But you earned it.
My breath caught. He wasn't talking about the fake wife thing anymore. It was in the way he said it, like he saw me.
Training starts tomorrow. Early.
He said simply. I blinked. Training?
Wolf training.
He said, leaning against the side of the Jackson's bed like it didn't hold his unconscious twin.
It's time you stopped carrying shame for something that's not your fault. Latent doesn't mean broken.
That hit me. Harder than I wanted it to.
Maybe one day,
He said, voice softer now.
you'll shift. Maybe you won't. But I don't want you walking around like your blood's something to hide.
I had to look away. I didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to me like that. Not even my own father before he'd disappeared with his pride and his whiskey bottle.
You're not what the pack said you were.
Brad added.
You're more.
I nodded slowly, still staring at Jackson's still face. Thank you.
For what?
For not making me feel like a fraud. Brad stood up straight.
Don't thank me yet. Wait until the training breaks your bones and your spirit.
I almost smiled. He walked to the door, paused, and looked over his shoulder.
And Raven,
Yeah?
you're doing more than pretending. You're caring, that counts.
And just like that, he was gone. Later that night, I sat by the window in the guest wing with my phone pressed to my ear, my knees pulled to my chest. The moon was fat and glowing, bleeding light through sheer curtains like spilled milk. Mom? I whispered when she picked up. She sounded groggy.
Raven? Baby, is everything okay?
Yeah, it is. Mom, I got us money. A lot of it.
How much is a lot?
I hesitated. $1 million. She went quiet.
Are you joking?
She asked, voice hushed. No. Another beat.
What did you do?
I didn't sell my soul, if that's what you're thinking, I said with a soft laugh. I'm helping someone. It's complicated, but I'm safe. I promise.
Complicated's never good, Ray.
She said gently.
Especially not when it involves that much money.
I'm okay, I swear. She exhaled slowly.
Just don't lose yourself in someone else's mess, all right?
I nodded, wiping at the corner of my eye even though she couldn't see. I won't, I promise.
And come home soon. Your brother misses you. He built a fort under the kitchen table again. Said he's saving a spot for you.
My chest tightened. Tell him I'll be there soon. I'll bring real marshmallows this time. After we hung up, I sat in silence. There was so much unsaid, so many cracks in the lie that could split open and swallow me whole. But there was also hope, and something else, something unspoken in the way Brad looked at me. Not love, not yet, but a beginning, a thread. And I held it gently in the quiet dark, praying it wouldn't snap. The air was cold that morning, biting, sharp and clean. Greystone land stretched wide and wild around me, the mist still clinging low to the pine trees, like it hadn't made up its mind whether to stay or vanish. I tugged the sleeves of my hoodie down past my wrists as I stepped onto the frost-streaked dirt training ground. Brad stood waiting for me. He wasn't dressed like an heir to an empire. Just a plain black tee stretched across his broad shoulders, sweats hanging low on his hips, and those combat boots like he was about to charge into war. His hair was damp, messy from a shower, and the breeze kept blowing it into his eyes, making him squint. He looked like a man made for battle, silent ones, private ones you don't talk about.
Ready?
He asked, voice low and steady. I nodded, though my body was stiff with nerves, as I'll ever be.
Good.
He didn't smile, but something in his expression softened. We started slow. Movement drills, breathing exercises, centering myself in my wolf even though she still felt like a whisper in the back of my skull. I could feel her pacing though, curious. Like she was sniffing out Brad's energy, unsure if he was danger or safety. Maybe both. Brad moved in close behind me, his hands lightly guiding my elbows as he corrected my stance.
You're leading too much with your shoulder.
He murmured. His voice was close, too close.
You'll throw yourself off balance when you pivot.
My breath caught. His touch was light, but the heat of him bled into me. I could feel every callus on his fingers. His palm rested at my waist just a second longer than it needed to.
You okay?
He asked. I'm fine, I said, forcing my legs not to shake.
You're tense.
Maybe I'm just not used to being touched like that, I admitted. He stepped back immediately, respectful, but that didn't make the air between us any less thick,
You'll get used to it.
he said after a beat.
We train close. It's about trust, balance, sensing the other person.
His words didn't settle my nerves, they just stirred something deeper. We ran drills until my legs burned and my hoodie clung to my spine with sweat. Then he shifted tactics, pressing, challenging, getting under my skin with quiet corrections and half grins that only showed when I stumbled or cursed under my breath. I hated how he smiled like that, and I hated that I wanted to see it again. Right when I felt like I could actually enjoy the rhythm between us, my phone rang. Patrick. Habit is a kind of silence you get used to something that speaks for you before you even open your mouth. What do you want? I said, keeping my voice low and stepping away from Brad.
Where the hell are you, Raven?
Patrick's voice was already boiling. I told you we're done.
You made a deal? With who? Where the hell even are you?
I'm safe. That's all you need to know.
I'm coming to get you. We're not done. You don't belong there.
I said I'm fine, Patrick. I'm not your problem anymore.
You're mine, Raven.
No, I said, chest aching. Not anymore. And I hung up. I turned around and nearly jumped. Brad was standing right there. His brows were pulled low over his eyes. His arms were crossed, quiet but not unfeeling.
Who was that?
He asked. My ex, Patrick, I said with a sigh. He's controlling. Jealous. Never listens. I broke up with him months ago, but he acts like I still owe him something, I said honestly. Brad didn't say anything at first, just looked out toward the tree line, jaw clenched, thumb rubbing the inside of his palm like he was working through something.
I know what that's like.
He said eventually.
Getting tied up with someone who doesn't see you, just wants to own you.
I glanced over. He wasn't looking at me. His voice was raw, like he was speaking through grit. What happened? I asked gently.
She was older,
He said.
smart, beautiful, said all the right things, but it was never about me. Just the title, the name, the money. When I finally saw through her, she told me I was weak, that I'd never be alpha material if I let emotion cloud my judgment.
That's awful.
I was going to propose to her.
That stunned me into silence. He finally looked at me, then eyes dark, but open, vulnerable.
She made me feel like I was only worth something if I buried who I was. I nearly believed her.
I stepped closer without realizing. I know that feeling, I whispered, of having to shrink yourself just to keep someone else happy. Brad studied me. Then, gently, he reached out and tucked a piece of sweaty hair behind my ear. His knuckles grazed my cheek.
You don't have to shrink here.
I swallowed hard. My throat felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire. Neither do you. The air between us crackled, intimate, charged, quiet. Not lust. Not yet. But something deeper, familiar, like recognizing the same ache in someone else's bones. I should get back, I whispered.
Yeah.
He murmured, stepping back, but not too far. I started walking, and he fell into step beside me. The silence felt comfortable this time, less lonely. That night, after showering and changing into Alara's borrowed pajamas, I lay awake in the big guest bed, staring at the ceiling fan above me. The sheets still smelled like lavender. The room was too quiet, but in that quiet I didn't feel so alone anymore. Maybe the lie I was living wasn't the only thing defining me anymore. Maybe the truth, slow, unfolding, painful, was finding a way in. And maybe Brad was part of that truth, The night was thick with fog and pine, the kind of night that held its breath. We were deep in the woods behind the Greystone estate, moonlight pouring like milk through the tall trees, silvering every leaf and stone. I stood barefoot on the dirt, my heart rattling like a hummingbird in a cage. My skin buzzed with something wild, raw, ancient. Brad stood beside me, arms crossed over his chest, watching like he could see the tremor beneath my bones.
You ready?
He asked, voice low, steady. I don't know, I whispered. But I'm here. He gave a single nod.
Then that's enough.
I closed my eyes and listened to the forest breathing. My pulse pounded in my ears. My limbs felt too tight for my own skin, like my bones were pushing against a body that couldn't hold them. Pain and freedom crashed into me at once. I dropped to my knees as the shift took over. My hands clawed into the dirt. Heat seared through my spine, curling every bone until they cracked and bent. My clothes tore, ripping away thread by thread, until it all gave way. I screamed through gritted teeth, but the sound twisted human into howl. And then I was gone. Or maybe I was more me than I'd ever been. My wolf stood tall in the clearing ash-gray coat glinting in the moonlight, paws sinking into the earth like they belonged there. My senses exploded. I could smell the moss on bark, hear Brad's heartbeat even as he stood feet away. I turned to him. He smiled slow and wide.
You did it.
He said, like it was the only thing that mattered. I held the shift for a few beats, a few breaths, but the fire in me fizzled just as fast. My vision blurred, the shift slipping away like sand through fingers. I collapsed forward and shifted back. The cool air hit me hard. I gasped, chest heaving, skin bare and vulnerable. I wrapped my arms around myself instinctively, knees tucked under me, breath hitching. My hair stuck to the sweat on my back, and the forest suddenly felt too open, too bright. Brad turned, but not fast enough. His eyes caught me and held. I didn't speak. Couldn't. His gaze swept over me slow, deliberate, and something in my chest tightened like a pulled string. His expression changed, shocked, yes, but also reverent, like I was something holy. Heat rose up my neck. I glanced down, trying to shield myself with trembling hands. Without a word, he stepped forward. He shrugged out of his jacket and crossed the space between us, his boots crunching over twigs and leaves.
Here.
He murmured. He wrapped it around my shoulders, rough wool and soft heat. His fingers brushed my collarbone, lingering too long, too gentle. My breath caught. His eyes were too close now, and too much. Full of something I didn't have a name for. Maybe I didn't want to name it. Thank you, I breathed. His hand stayed on my shoulder.
You were beautiful.
He said. His voice was so quiet it didn't feel like words, more like an A carved into the air between us. I looked up. His face was shadowed, but I could see his eyes lit with something that stirred a storm in me. Then his lips were on mine, no warning. No hesitation, just heat, need, and silence, hungry. Like he'd been waiting too long, holding back too much. His mouth moved over mine like he was trying to memorize every inch. My fingers clutched at his shirt, trying to ground myself, trying not to drown. He pulled me closer, so close our hearts beat in the same rhythm. His chest pressed against mine, warm and solid, grounding me. His hand slid to my waist, steadying me like I might break, and he wouldn't let me. Then his fingers tilted my chin, and he parted my lips like a question. His tongue slid into my mouth. I gasped into the kiss, low and surprised. My fingers tangled into his wet hair, needing to hold something, anything, as the world spun. Brad tasted like mint and heat, like safety and danger all at once. The kiss slowed, deepened until the world outside didn't exist. Just the jacket slipping off one shoulder. Just his breath against my cheek. Just the two of us tangled in moonlight and skin and want. But then I pulled back. Slow. Shaking. He leaned his forehead to mine, breathing hard.
Too much?
he asked, husky. No, I whispered. Just not ready. He nodded once, not moving. His hand rested on my waist like it belonged there.
I'm not going anywhere.
He said.
You don't have to run.
I swallowed hard, my throat thick. I've always run.
Then let me be the one you run to.
That broke something in me. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. He didn't flinch, just pressed his lips to my forehead and held them there like a promise. We stood like that, in the middle of the woods, me wrapped in his jacket, him wrapped around me. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel broken. I just felt safe. The hallway smelled like lavender floor polish and too much grief. My footsteps echoed down the corridor as I approached Jackson's room. I hadn't slept much. My whole body felt like it had been wrung out, hung on a line, and left to dry in cold wind. The door creaked as I pushed it open. He lay there just like before, still, pale, beautiful, in a way that didn't feel fair. His lips looked dry, and the shirt he'd been wearing yesterday was still sticking to his chest in damp creases. I frowned. The nurse must have forgotten, or maybe they assumed his wife would do it, which technically I was supposed to be. I shut the door behind me and stood there a moment, my fingers curling into my palms. Hey, I whispered, voice catching in my throat. It's just me. The windows were cracked just enough to let in the morning light, soft, golden, stretching long shadows across the room. It painted his features in warm highlights, made his jawline sharper, his lashes darker. Like something straight out of a painting someone would hang in a memory they weren't ready to let go of. I pulled on the gloves from the table and rolled my sleeves up. The water in the basin was lukewarm, and I soaked the cloth gently, wringing it out until it was barely dripping. My hands trembled as I reached for the hem of his shirt. I'm gonna get you cleaned up, I murmured, mostly to steady myself. His skin was warm under the fabric. That surprised me. I don't know why. Maybe because everything else about him felt so still. I peeled the shirt over his head, folding it with shaky hands before setting it aside. My breath caught at the sight of his chest, broad, sculpted like he'd spent half his life training for war and the other half surviving it. I started shifting, I said softly, wiping along his collarbone. Brad's been training me. I'm not latent anymore. The silence in the room changed after I said it. Like the walls were listening. Like Jackson, somewhere in that coma, drenched sleep, heard me too. I looked at his face and swallowed. I think you'd be proud. Or at least a little impressed. I hesitated at his waistband. My hands froze. There was something sacred about that line, his hips, the intimacy of it, the vulnerability. But I was the only one here. He couldn't ask. He couldn't consent. It wasn't romantic. It was necessary. Still, my hands shook as I unfastened the button and slipped the fabric down. My heart banged against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I'd never seen a man this close before, not like this. Not real. Not raw. Not unconscious and trusting me with every part of him. I kept my eyes focused, respectful, my touch quick and gentle. I cleaned his thighs, the inside of his legs, careful not to linger anywhere I shouldn't. My breath felt trapped in my chest the whole time. I slipped a fresh pair of trousers onto him, smoothing the fabric over his legs like he was made of glass. When I stood again, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. You're gonna be okay, I whispered, brushing his hair back from his forehead. You've got too much fight in you to stay down. That's when my phone buzzed on the tray. Patrick. I stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds before answering. What? I snapped, already done with his drama.
Where the hell are you?
His voice was low, sharp, the way it always got when he felt like he was losing control. I told you, I'm safe here.
I don't give a damn about safe. I want you back here. This whole thing, whatever it is, you're done with it. You're coming with me. Now.
I blinked, stunned at his nerve. You don't own me, Patrick,
I've always taken care of you.
he hissed.
You think those people will? You think that wolf boy will protect you like I?
I deserve better, I cut in, voice cracking with anger. You were poison, Patrick. You dragged me down every time I tried to breathe. You made me feel like a burden when I was breaking my back for everyone. I don't owe you anything. Silence. Then, something darker.
You're gonna regret talking to me like that, Raven.
I shook my head, tears rising fast. No, the only thing I regret is giving you so many chances to ruin me. Then I hit block. The phone dropped onto the counter with a soft clatter. My whole body was shaking. I felt like a live wire, like every nerve was lit up and sparking. I turned back to Jackson and knelt beside his bed, wiping at the tears sliding down my cheeks. Sorry you had to hear that, I whispered. But I think that was the first time I ever said it out loud. The truth. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something shift in me. Like the air after a storm. Like the very beginning of freedom. I was in the Greystone dining room, the fireplace cracked softly behind us, throwing gold onto the white china and casting flickering shadows across the table. I sat between Brad and Lillian, trying to act like I belonged. Like I hadn't just wiped drool from Jackson's mouth an hour ago. Like I hadn't stripped a man I barely knew, dressed his limp body, whispered into his silence. My whole body still buzzed with the guilt of it all, yet something about this family's warmth made the lie I was living feel oddly comfortable. Mr. Greystone set his fork down and cleared his throat. That old alpha presence of his filled the room like pressure before a storm. His silvered hair was slicked back, but there was a slump in his shoulders tonight that hadn't been there the last few days. His voice cracked slightly when he finally spoke.
It's been weeks.
He said.
Jackson still hasn't woken. And I.
His eyes drifted across the room but landed on Brad.
I'm not the alpha I used to be. My body's slower, my senses duller, and our enemies are watching.
The room went quiet, except for the soft clink of Lillian setting down her water glass.
I want Brad to take the alpha mantle, and at least until Jackson wakes. The pack needs strength, leadership, clarity.
He turned to me then, and I felt my spine straighten like someone had just yanked an invisible string.
Raven,
he said gently.
I know you're his wife.
My throat tightened, but I nodded anyway.
But I need to know if you'll support this.
Every eye landed on me, including Brad's. His gaze wasn't hard or demanding. It was hopeful. Guarded, maybe. Like he didn't expect me to say yes, but desperately wanted me to. Of course, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It's your choice who leads the pack, and Brad's more than capable. His shoulders eased. Brad blinked once, but I didn't miss the flicker of emotion in his eyes. Respect? Relief? I couldn't tell. All I knew was that something in the air shifted between us. Lillian clapped her hands softly.
Then it's settled. The ceremony will be tomorrow evening, just before moonrise.
And just like that, I was thrust into another layer of this strange new world. Another lie to carry. The next evening, the whole estate buzzed with quiet chaos. I'd never seen so many wolves in suits before, strong jaws, thick necks, the scent of leather and cedar and testosterone clouding the halls. They moved like military men, shoulders squared, chins high. I was in my room, slipping into a dark forest green dress that hugged my waist and spilled around my legs like melted velvet. Alara would have approved. My hair was curled soft around my shoulders, and I wore the locket Mama gave me tucked between my collarbones like armor. I found Brad in his room, pacing in front of the mirror, clearly fighting with his tie. His black button-up was half done, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked rugged, dangerous. Every inch the alpha he was about to become. But his hands were trembling. Need help? I asked from the doorway, voice soft. his head jerked up.
God, yes. I've tied this thing 3 times and somehow made it worse every time.
I stepped closer, fingers brushing his collar. Relax. You're literally leading an entire pack, and this is the part you panic about? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes.
I can fight off rogue wolves, negotiate borders, manage the entire council, but I swear neckties are my kryptonite.
My fingers moved with muscle memory, tighten, loop, fold, slide. It was intimate, standing there in front of him, our faces inches apart. I could smell his cologne, warm, spicy, like cinnamon and rain. His jaw tensed under my knuckles. I'm proud of you, I said, tying the last loop with a small tug. His breath hitched.
You're not scared?
He asked. I shook my head, but my voice betrayed me. I am. Of everything. Of this lie. Of falling for the wrong person. Again. He stared at me. Not the way a man looks at someone he desires, but the way a man looks at someone he can't believe he's about to lose.
I know what this is costing you.
He said, his voice low.
And I won't forget it.
For a second, I swore he was about to kiss me. His hands hovered at my waist, then slowly lowered. Instead, he touched the locket on my chest with his thumb.
Wish me luck.
He whispered. You don't need it, I replied. You were born for this. But what I didn't say, what I couldn't say, was I need you to stay the man you are even after tonight. Even after the power settles into your bones. Because Brad Greystone wasn't just becoming alpha. He was becoming something else to me. Something dangerously close to everything. The ceremony was everything a royal oath should be: gold banners draped across stone columns, candles flickering like stars overhead. And a crowd of wolves whose eyes shone with devotion. We were in the heart of the Greystone fortress, but it felt like we'd stepped into some ancient dream. Grand, historic, reverent. I stood in the front row, hands clasped tight, heart overflowing. The joy was too big for words, just this warmth in my chest, and a smile I couldn't stop. Brad looked dangerous and divine in that charcoal suit. His eyes searched the crowd until they landed on me, steady and warm. Mr. Greystone rose, his voice rough from age and command.
Tonight, I name my son Brad as acting alpha until Jackson returns to us. May the spirits guide him.
He turned to Brad and placed the iron crown, a polished black metal circlet shaped like wolf fangs, onto his head. The pack howled. Brad didn't smile. He bowed his head, like the weight of the crown was more than just steel. And in that moment, my heart twisted for him, for how much he never asked for this, and took it anyway. Afterward, the hall turned into a celebration, wild and rowdy like any Southern pack party. Someone poured me a whiskey soda, and a girl named Mia, a tiny redhead in leather, pulled me into a spinning dance. But my heart wasn't in it. Jackson. Like clockwork, I found my feet drifting down the quiet hallway once the noise dulled into echoes. His door was cracked open. I eased inside. Dark. Still. Familiar. I could do this with my eyes closed by now, fold the old clothes, grab a fresh t-shirt from the drawer, warm the water for his sponge bath. He smelled like citrus soap and cedar, like the forest after a storm. He always did. I dipped the cloth, squeezed it out, and lifted the hem of his shirt, talking to him in that soft whisper I'd come to depend on. The alpha ceremony was grand. Jackson. Brad is the new alpha of our pack. His skin was warm. Too warm. I paused, blinking. His chest rose deeper than normal. And then, God help me, a hand shot up, catching my wrist midair. I gasped. My knees nearly buckled.
Caroline?
His voice was gravel and confusion. Deep, raspy. Very awake. Jackson. I choked out, stumbling back, but he was faster. He pulled me forward with both hands. The bedsheets twisted beneath us as I fell on top of him. I could barely breathe. His strength was back like a wave slamming into shore.
Caroline, you came back.
He murmured, voice thick with relief, with need. No, Jackson. I squirmed, panicking. But he didn't listen. He gripped the back of my head and crushed his mouth to mine, hungry, desperate. Like a man starved, his fingers tangled in my hair, my hands pressed flat to his chest, trying to push. But he was too strong. His kiss wasn't gentle, it was chaos. I turned my face away. I'm not Caroline, I gasped, struggling to free myself. Stop, please, Jackson. My voice must have cut through something, because he froze. And then he stared at me, trying to memorize something I couldn't understand. And then his hands fell to his sides. I yanked away, stumbled off the bed, my chest heaving. My lips still burned from the pressure. My heart beat in my throat. I ran, out into the hallway where the world tilted sideways. My vision swam. The tears came without warning. And then, Brad. I slammed into his chest hard. His arms caught me instantly.
Raven?
His voice was low and panicked.
What happened?
I tried to speak, but the words came broken. He's awake.
What?
Brad's hands gripped my arms.
Jackson?
I nodded, tears sliding down my cheeks. He thought I was Caroline. He kissed me, he wouldn't let go. Brad's face changed, hardened like stone, just for a second before he smoothed it over and turned, striding toward Jackson's room without a word. I stood frozen in the hallway, shaking, with the taste of someone else's heartbreak still on my lips. The sun had barely burned the mist off the hills when the Greystone house erupted like it was Thanksgiving morning and Christmas all rolled into one. Jackson was awake. The entire estate buzzed like bees in a hive. I could hear feet moving fast on the floorboards above me, excited whispers echoing down the hallways, and the faint sound of someone crying, happy tears, I hoped. Still in my robe, I stood barefoot at the edge of the balcony outside my room, the cool air biting my skin. My fingers gripped the wrought iron railing as I stared across the frost-laced lawn that rolled into the tree line. I should have felt joy, relief, but my stomach twisted with a guilt so heavy it made my chest ache. He woke up, and the first word out of his mouth was Caroline. But I wasn't her.
Raven?
Brad's voice came from behind me. I turned slowly, and there he was, dressed in jeans and a Henley, eyes soft, but jaw tight. Always trying to be the calm in the chaos, always keeping it together.
He remembers everything.
Brad said quietly, stepping beside me.
The accident. The tracks. You.
I couldn't meet his gaze, and he still thinks I'm hers?
No. No.
He said.
He knows now. No.
My heart jumped. Brad's throat moved as he swallowed.
He told Dad and Mom everything at breakfast, said he could feel you while he was out, that your voice anchored him.
Brad paused, eyes searching mine.
He told them you weren't Caroline, but he believes you're his fated mate.
I exhaled sharply, hand flying to my mouth. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. My whole body tensed like a pulled bowstring. He said that? I whispered. Brad nodded, slowly.
He meant it. I've never seen him that sure about anything.
I sat down on the bench against the stone wall, pulling Brad's jacket tighter around me. He had given it to me that night I'd shifted. My first time as a wolf. The scent of pine, musk, and wood smoke still clung to the collar. He doesn't know what happened between us, I said quietly. Brad didn't speak right away. Then,
Not yet.
we sat there in silence, our knees almost touching. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. What if he tells the pack? I asked, voice breaking. What if everyone finds out I lied? That I pretended to be someone I'm not? Brad leaned in, resting his forearms on his thighs.
You didn't pretend. You survived. You stepped into chaos to protect a man you didn't even know. You could have walked away. But you didn't.
I looked at him then, really looked, his jaw clenched in thought, his eyes stormy and shadowed under the weight of it all. The alpha crown hadn't even had time to cool on his head, and already the pressure was back. My throat felt dry. Brad. He turned to me, voice barely above a whisper.
Tonight. I'm gonna talk to him. Tell him everything.
My breath hitched.
I love you, Raven.
He said gently. He reached over and took my hand. His thumb brushed across my knuckles, and for a moment I let myself feel it, all of it. The rush. The ache. The gravity of wanting something that feels too big for your chest. I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. He smelled like cedar and leather and everything I shouldn't crave. And then, slowly, I wrapped my arms around his waist, feeling the heat of his body, the rise and fall of his breath. "Don't break my heart then," I whispered against his chest. His arms tightened around me, and his lips brushed my hair.
I'll do everything not to.
But deep down, I wasn't sure either of us could walk away without something shattering. The grand living room of the Greystone estate was glowing with warm amber light, fire flickering in the hearth like a silent witness to what was about to unfold. The scent of cedarwood and roasted herbs still lingered in the air from dinner, but everything inside me had turned cold. Brad's hand brushed against mine as we walked in, but it wasn't the way it used to feel. It didn't stop the ache in my chest. It didn't stop my pulse from roaring in my ears. Mr. Greystone was sitting upright in his leather armchair, one hand gripping the head of his cane, the other holding Lillian's fingers. Lillian's face beamed like someone who'd waited too long for good news. And then there was Jackson, dressed in navy, clean-shaven, smiling like he remembered how to charm a room.
Come, Brad. Raven.
Lillian called gently. Her voice carried the softness of hope, the kind that hurt more when it breaks.
We were just talking about the engagement.
My stomach dropped. Brad and I froze mid-step. For a moment I thought maybe I misheard her. Engagement? Then Jackson stood up and walked over to me. His eyes, bright and full of warmth, locked onto mine. And then he took my hand. I didn't pull back. I didn't even breathe.
I remember everything you said to me while I was in the coma.
He said softly, his thumb brushing the back of my hand.
You told me stories from your childhood, about your little brother, about the time you scraped your knee in 6th grade and your mom gave you a superhero Band-Aid, about Patrick, about how you'd never felt safe before.
His voice thickened with emotion.
You said you were scared of love, that no one had ever stayed.
I looked down at the rug, my throat closing up.
I want to be the one who stays.
He whispered.
Let me meet your mom. Let me do this right.
I felt the entire room watching me. Brad said nothing. He sat stiff and silent across the room, jaw tight, hands locked in his lap. I stared at him, willing him, begging him. Say something. Say it's not true. Say we meant something. But he didn't even look at me. "Excuse me," I muttered, slipping my hand out of Jackson's. My voice was shaky but low. I need some air. I walked straight out the side door, into the chill of the garden path, moonlight filtering through the bare trees, brittle leaves crunching beneath my boots. A few minutes later, I heard the door creak behind me. I didn't have to turn. I knew it was Brad by the way the air shifted. By the way my heartbeat picked up. "You should have said something," I murmured, not turning to face him. "You just sat there, watched me get handed to him like a damn heirloom."
Raven.
"No," I spun around. "You don't get to Raven me right now. You asked me to stay. You begged me to lie to his family. I nursed your brother for weeks, Brad. I bathed him, fed him, took care of your parents. I kissed you God, I shifted because of you." His jaw clenched, throat bobbing as he took a slow step forward.
I know.
"Then why didn't you speak up?" My voice cracked, tears burning the corners of my eyes. "Why did you let him hold my hand like I was his?" Why did you let them talk about an engagement like it was written in stone? He looked down, rubbing his thumb over his brow like the weight of everything was crushing him.
My parents.
He whispered.
They've waited so long to see Jackson come back. He's always been the one they look to. The chosen one. The next alpha. If I tell them I'm in love with the woman they think he was fated to.
Stop, I cut in, breath hitching. Don't make this about your parents. This isn't about them. This is about us. Or maybe I was the only one who thought there was an us. His eyes snapped to mine then, sharp and tormented.
You think I don't love you?
I blinked.
You think I wanted to sit there and say nothing while he touched you?
Brad stepped closer, his voice low, rough.
I wanted to rip his hand off you. I wanted to grab you and say she's mine. She's the only woman I've ever wanted. But I didn't. Because I've spent my whole life putting this family first, I didn't know how not to.
I swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. And what about me? He reached for me then, cupping my cheek like I was breakable.
You are everything.
He said. And then, silence. His forehead touched mine, breaths mingling in the cool night air. I could feel his chest rise and fall. His fingers tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, trailing down the side of my neck, stopping at my collarbone. Then fight for me, I whispered. His lips hovered over mine.
I will.
He whispered, but his voice trembled with a hesitation he couldn't hide, a promise tangled in doubt. I pulled back and let the moment break. And I walked away first. Because sometimes, even when the words are finally spoken, they come too late. The great hall smelled like candle wax, roasted garlic, and polished wood, a mix that clung to my senses and somehow made me feel both at home and like an intruder. I stood beside Brad as Mr. Greystone raised his glass, clearing his throat.
I'd like to share something with the pack tonight.
He announced, voice deep and steady.
My son Jackson has returned to us by the grace of the moon, and it gives me great pride to officially announce his engagement to Raven Ashwood.
The room erupted in gasps and claps. My name rang out like a punch. My stomach dropped. My throat tightened as if someone had wrapped an invisible hand around it. I turned slowly, mechanically, toward Brad. My eyes screamed, "Say something. Do something." But Brad didn't even flinch. His jaw was tight. His gaze was forward. That proud alpha expression he wore like a mask, strong, unreadable, and cruelly silent. Jackson took my hand, lifting it as though we were at a wedding already. His palm was warm. Too warm. His smile, God, it was hopeful. And I hated myself for what I saw in his eyes.
I know we didn't plan any of this,
He whispered to me under the cheering.
but I meant what I said.
My lips parted, but no words came. I just nodded. A lie painted over my skin like cold rainwater. The crowd closed in. Toasts rose. Smiles, claps on the back. And still Brad said nothing. Brad wasn't going to confess anything. He used me, used my innocence. Fine, I muttered to myself. I pulled the $1 million check Brad had given me from the back of my wardrobe. My heart pounded as I walked into his room, the scent of cedar and something unmistakably him wrapping around me one last time. I placed the check on his neatly made bed, weighing it down with a folded note. My handwriting was shaky but firm. I thought I'd found real love after Patrick. I was wrong. Keep your check, I don't need your pity. Without looking back, I turned and slipped out the fortress. I didn't take my phone. I didn't even take a flashlight. I just walked. Out into the trees. Into the damn woods where everything felt real and painful and open. The wind cut against my cheeks like glass, high needles pricked my soles, but I didn't care. The moon was half full and watching me like it knew all my secrets. I don't know how long I walked. I just needed air. That's when I smelled him. Not Brad. Not Jackson. Something else. Something foul. A scent like rust and sweat and wet fur, feral and wrong. My heart jumped. I spun around just as something tackled me from behind. I hit the ground hard, my back slamming into damp earth. My hoodie tore at the shoulder. A rogue. He snarled inches from my face, reeking of rot and madness. His claws dug into my hip. I let out a scream that echoed through the trees. I had to shift. My bones cracked as my wolf burst forward, golden fur taking over, claws slashing. I bit his shoulder hard and threw him off me, but then another one. He came from the left, knocked me sideways. My flank hit a tree trunk. My breath was gone. 2 against 1. One pinned me, claws at my neck. Hot drool dripped down on me. I saw my death. And then a roar. Brad. He tore into the clearing like a hurricane in wolf form. Jet black, rage incarnate, he slammed into the rogue on top of me, sending him flying into a boulder with a sickening crunch. The other one tried to run. Too late. Brad's teeth clamped down on its throat and twisted. It was over in seconds. I shifted back, shaking, my skin scraped, bruised, bare beneath the scraps of what used to be my clothes. I held my knees to my chest, breathing hard. Brad shifted too, sweat glistening down his chest, pants low on his hips. He crouched next to me, jacket already in his hands. He wrapped it around my shoulders without a word.
What the hell were you doing out here, Ray?
He whispered hoarsely. His voice was low, rattled, angry, scared. I didn't answer.
What were you thinking?
He asked again, kneeling in front of me now.
You could have died.
Maybe that would have been easier, I muttered, my voice cracking. His head snapped back a little.
Don't say that.
I meant it. He dropped to sit beside me, brushing a shaking hand through his dark hair. I stared at the ground, voice trembling. I waited for you to say something tonight. To stop it. To stop this whole fake engagement circus, but you stood there. Like I meant nothing to you.
You think you mean nothing to me?
His voice rose.
You think this is easy for me? Raven, Jackson just came back from a coma. Our parents are finally smiling again. I couldn't take that from them.
You already did, I shouted. The moment you kissed me under the moon, the moment you let me fall in love with you, you took everything. And tonight you gave me nothing. He rubbed his chest, like the words hurt physically.
It's not that simple.
No, Brad. It is. The woods were too quiet after that. He finally looked at me, not like the alpha. Not like the heir. Just him.
I wanted to tell them. I was going to. But when I saw my dad's face, his pride, I caved. I'm not proud of it.
Tears slipped down my cheeks.
Raven.
Brad's voice broke through the heavy silence as he rushed in, breathless.
The second I saw the check on my bed, I knew. You were gone. I'd tear the damn world apart to protect you, but I never figured out how to protect your heart and my family at the same time.
I didn't move. My jaw clenched, eyes fixed ahead. You didn't come for me, I snapped, voice trembling. You came because keeping your family happy matters more. His hand reached for me, warm, calloused fingers brushing my cheek, as if he could undo everything with a single touch.
I swear. I came for you, Raven. Just you.
I pulled away slowly, looking him dead in the eye. Then you can prove it. His brows drew tight.
How?
I'm leaving. Take me home. To North Carolina. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard.
No, Ray, please. Just stay until the engagement's over. After that, I'll drive you back myself. I promise.
That did it. A red-hot ache burned in my chest. My hand moved on instinct, cracking across his cheek. The sound echoed. You're a coward, Brad, I hissed, voice shaking. Worse than Patrick. At least he never pretended. His jaw tightened, but he didn't stop me as I turned on my heel and walked straight into the fortress feeling anything but strong. Helpless. Furious. Heartbroken. And still, loving him. Damn me. The SUV rumbled down the narrow, winding roads of North Carolina like it didn't belong here, and honestly, it didn't. I sat stiffly in the back seat, caught between two worlds, the one I'd fought like hell to survive, and the one I was pretending I belonged to now. Jackson insisted on visiting my village himself to meet my mom and brother face to face, to invite them personally to our engagement ceremony.
No one else.
He said, his voice firm but gentle.
They're your family, Raven. They deserve to hear it from me.
There was something in his tone, honor maybe, or maybe guilt, but either way he meant it. And despite the tangled mess in my heart, I nodded. Because that part of him, the part that tried to do right by people, it still moved me.
Your village is beautiful.
Jackson said softly, leaning forward so his voice could reach me from the front. I gave a half smile. It's not a village. It's a forgotten dot on a map. He chuckled, brushing a hand through his tousled, sun-kissed hair.
Well, I like forgotten dots. They tend to hold the best stories.
Brad, seated next to him in the passenger seat, hadn't said a word since we left the fortress. His arms were folded over his chest, gaze fixed out the window like it held all the answers he refused to ask me for. The silence between us was suffocating. He hadn't even looked at me, not really, but I could feel it, that quiet burn of jealousy under his skin. As if sensing the tension, Jackson glanced at his brother.
You should come with us inside, Brad.
Brad blinked like he hadn't realized we'd stopped.
Yeah,
He said, nodding once.
yeah, sure.
I stepped out first, my boots sinking into the dry dirt outside my mother's worn-down hut. The front door hung crooked, and the windows were covered with hand-stitched curtains faded from too many summers. My heart twisted. Coming home always felt like peeling back a bandage. Ma opened the door before we could knock, her hair tied up in a scarf, a flowered apron still clinging to her front. Her eyes widened when she saw the two tall, polished strangers behind me.
Ray?
She said cautiously. Hey Ma, I whispered. My little brother peeked out from behind her leg, wide-eyed. Jackson crouched and smiled.
You must be Eli. Heard a lot about you.
Eli grinned and nodded shyly. Jackson always knew how to charm people. Brad stood quietly behind, hands in his jacket pockets, scanning the place like he didn't know what to do with himself. We stepped inside. The inside of the house smelled like cornbread, sweat, and thyme. Our furniture was second-hand and stained from use. A quilt Ma had sewn from old t-shirts hung crooked above the couch.
This is home.
Jackson looked around and nodded. I saw the flicker of gratitude in Ma's eyes. She motioned to the sofa.
Please sit. I wasn't expecting company, but you all are welcome.
Jackson cleared his throat and stepped forward.
Miss Ashwood, I'd like to formally invite you and Eli to our engagement ceremony.
Her eyes darted to me, and I nodded, eyes wide with silent apology.
You're marrying Jackson?
She asked gently. I nodded again. It's real, Ma, I promise. A quiet smile curved her lips, but I saw the questions hiding behind it. She always knew when I was pretending. Brad still hadn't spoken. As Ma and Jackson discussed travel arrangements, and Eli excitedly talked about suits, I stepped outside to catch my breath. The sun was dipping behind the trees, the air thick with North Carolina summer, the scent of pine needles, diesel, and someone burning wood in the distance. Then I heard the voice.
Well, I'll be damned. Raven Ashwood.
I turned slowly. It was Travis Patrick's friend. Tall, lean, still wearing that same smugness that made my skin itch. He stood leaning against a cracked fence post, arms crossed like he owned the ground.
How you doing, sweetheart?
I kept my arms folded, eyes cool. I'm fine. He whistled low.
I heard some wild things lately. You living in that big Greystone fortress now? I heard you're engaged to the Alpha?
I stiffened. Yeah, that's right.
You really think Patrick ain't gonna hear about this?
I don't care if he does, I snapped, voice low and cold. He tilted his head and took a step closer.
Girl, you think you can run off and play house with some fancy wolves and that won't come back to bite you?
Before I could answer, another voice cut in sharp, deep and furious.
She said she's fine.
Brad stepped between us, shoulders square, the sun hitting the angles of his jaw like carved steel. His voice had a warning in it, low and lethal. Travis held his hands up.
Hey man, just chatting. No need to get your flannel in a twist.
Leave, now.
Brad said. Travis looked at me once more, then spat on the ground and walked off. I stood frozen, heartbeat loud in my ears. Brad turned slowly to me, stepping closer.
You okay?
I nodded, swallowing hard. The door opened behind us. Jackson stood there, watching.
We're ready to head back.
He said, his voice flat.
Everything okay?
Brad stepped back. Yeah, I said quickly. All good. But nothing was good. I was standing between two wolves, two hearts, and my own was tearing in half. The sky outside was bleeding orange, fading into a smoky dusk as twilight crept in over the Greystone estate. Shadows stretched long across the wood-paneled walls of my room, brushing over the high ceilings like fingers made of smoke. It was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made your chest feel hollow, like something bad was inching closer and just hadn't knocked yet. I stood in front of the mirror in my in-suite bathroom, the glass fogged over from the hot water, my skin dewy and flushed. The lavender-scented steam curled around my body as I leaned forward, letting the water pour down the nape of my neck and trace the curve of my spine. For a moment, I let myself forget. About the engagement. About the lies. About the fact that my heart still hadn't decided between the two men who were supposed to protect it. Then my phone rang. The shrill tone cut through the hum of the shower like a blade. I ignored it. It rang again. And again. Reluctantly, I shut the water off, wrapping a towel around my body, and stepping into the cool air of my bedroom, droplets of water clinging to my skin. Unknown number. My chest tightened. My fingers trembled as I picked up the call. Hello?
I just want to see you one last time.
Patrick. His voice came through low, too calm. No, I snapped. You don't get that.
If you don't meet me, I'll come there.
He warned, his tone turning sharp.
I will take you.
I exhaled, furious. Do what you want. And I hung up. I tossed the phone onto the bed and wrapped the towel tighter around myself, still damp and angry. My heart was thudding hard, echoing in my throat. I hated the way he could still shake me, still crawl under my skin like a splinter left in too long. I walked back into the bathroom, mind buzzing, wanting nothing more than to drown my thoughts under another rinse of hot water, but that's when I heard it. A creak. My body stilled. I froze mid-step, the kind of stillness that wasn't learned but primal, instinctual, wolf-deep. Who's there? I called out, voice sharp. No answer. I reached for the robe hanging on the hook, but before I could grab it, the bathroom door creaked open. Patrick. His eyes darkened when he saw me in nothing but a towel, hair dripping, chest heaving with panic. A slow smirk curled across his face.
I've already seen you like this.
He drawled, stepping inside like he owned the air around me. I backed up instinctively until the cold tile met my back. Get out. But he didn't. His hand slid to my hip and he leaned in, crashing his mouth against mine. I shoved him with all my strength. He stumbled back a step, then laughed, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Don't you dare," I spat, eyes burning.
You've forgotten everything so fast, Raven?
He whispered, brushing his fingers along my collarbone.
But you and we don't just end. You're coming with me. Now.
No, Patrick, stop. But he was already yanking me by the wrist, towel slipping dangerously low as I tried to pull free. Then the bedroom door burst open. Brad. Jackson. They stood side by side, arms crossed, blocking the doorway like twin statues carved in fury. Their eyes softened for a breath, but they didn't hold mine. Instead, they dropped. Lower. To the hollow of my throat, to the swell of my chest. To the edge of the towel clinging to my stomach. Then Brad's gaze locked on Patrick's hand, still gripping my waist. And something in him shattered.
You thought you could walk in here and take her?
Brad's voice was low, dangerous. A storm rumbling just before the lightning. Patrick straightened.
She is mine!
I tore myself free from Patrick's grip, clutching the towel to my bare chest too late. Their eyes had already seen me. Shame burned hot across my skin as I backed away, the silence thick, the air electric.
She was never yours.
Jackson said coldly.
How dare you touch her?
Brad growled, his voice low and lethal. He launched first. A single punch cracked across Patrick's jaw, sending him crashing backward into the dresser. The lamp shattered as he fell. Patrick scrambled up, blood on his mouth, rage in his eyes, and lunged. The fight was brutal. Bodies slammed into furniture. Growls echoed like something animal had taken over. Fists flew with bone-crushing force. Brad's knuckles split open as he landed punch after punch, until Patrick was bleeding, gasping on the floor. Brad pinned him down, knees digging into Patrick's sides, his fist raised for the final blow, face wild with fury.
Brad.
Jackson barked, stepping between them.
That's enough.
Brad's chest heaved. Sweat clung to his temples. Blood, some his, mostly Patrick's, dripped down his arm. But he didn't move until Jackson grabbed his wrist. Brad leaned in close, grabbing Patrick by the collar. His voice was barely a whisper, but it hit like thunder.
Don't ever say Raven's yours. She's not. You show your face again, you die.
Jackson stared at Brad, confusion etched deep in his features, questions flickering behind his eyes. But he didn't interrupt. Patrick didn't answer right away. Just looked at me one last time, his eyes tired, bitter, like he knew he'd already lost long ago. Then he left, limping. Broken. Both men turned to me at once. Brad's eyes softened first. Jackson's followed, sharp with worry. Without a word, they each began peeling off their hoodies, but Brad was faster. He stepped forward, wrapping his around my shoulders before Jackson could move.
You're safe.
He murmured, his voice low and rough as he tucked a damp strand of hair behind my ear. His touch was feather-light, careful, familiar. My heart thudded, loud and confused in my chest. I glanced between them, Brad steady, silent, Jackson wide-eyed and disoriented, searching my face like it held answers. I didn't call him, I whispered, voice cracking. I swear.
I know.
Jackson said softly, almost broken.
I know, Raven.
He stepped in, one hand cupping the back of my head, pulling me gently into his chest. I felt the steady beat of his heart against my cheek, warm and real. His other arm circled around me, firm and protective. Behind us, Brad took a single step back, just one. But it felt like a chasm opening. He didn't speak, didn't argue. Just stood there, watching, jaw tight, eyes unreadable. And there I was, soaking wet, wrapped in Jackson's arms, towel knotted loosely at my chest. two hearts, two histories. And mine? Mine was split right down the middle. The Greystone estate looked like something out of a southern bridal magazine, white roses blooming wild over the gates, fairy lights strung through ancient trees, and gold-trimmed drapery falling from every corner of the lawn. But the air felt too tight around me, like a corset I hadn't agreed to wear. My stomach twisted with each step toward a future I didn't choose. Mama was in my room, her fingers working steady through my hair, pinning in delicate white blossoms. The same ones she used to weave into my braids back home before school dances.
Still,
She said, her voice soft.
I always imagined the first time I'd see you in white, you'd be glowing.
I looked at myself in the mirror. I wasn't glowing. My reflection stared back like a ghost trying to smile. "I'm fine, Mama," I whispered. "It's not real love. But I've made peace with it." She paused.
Baby, are you sure this is what you want?
"No," I breathed, hands clutching the edge of the vanity. "But I love two men. One couldn't let go of fate. The other couldn't stand up for me, so I'll fall for the money instead." She closed her eyes like the words physically hurt her. But she nodded.
Then hold your chin high, Raven. If you're gonna walk into the fire, do it in heels and don't flinch.
I stood when she did. My dress was silky champagne, low in the back, clinging in all the ways that made me feel exposed and beautiful at the same time. The satin shimmered under the lights as I stepped out, my little brother clapping wide-eyed from the hallway.
"You look like a princess, Ray."
God, I wished I felt like one. Outside, the crowd had gathered. The Greystone pack stood in rows, dressed in dark suits and silky gowns. A string quartet played something soft, romantic. Jackson waited under the massive oak at the center of the courtyard, looking too perfect in his charcoal suit and ivory tie. He turned the moment I stepped out. His eyes lit up like the moon was rising just for him. And Brad stood to the side. His eyes locked on mine like I'd just gutted him. He looked handsome, black suit, crisp white shirt, no tie. But his shoulders were tight, arms stiff at his sides. And his jaw clenched so hard it could have cracked bone. He didn't smile. Didn't even blink. The ceremony started. Jackson took my hands gently in his, and I could feel the heat of everyone watching. His grip was confident, strong, and sure, like he truly believed I was his. Like he'd never questioned it.
"I, Jackson Greystone,
He began.
stand before the moon, my family, and my pack, to vow myself to Raven Ashwood, my mate, my heart."
My chest tightened. I forced my breath steady. "I, Raven Ashwood," I replied, my voice barely a whisper, "vow to walk beside Jackson Greystone, through light and shadow as his partner." I didn't say mate. I couldn't. The officiant gave a nod. Mr. Greystone looked proud. Lillian dabbed a tear, and Jackson, he turned to me, sliding a silver ring onto my finger. The metal was cold, too cold, like winter had settled in my veins. Then he reached for me, wrapping his hand around my waist, drawing me close. He kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't shallow. It was deep and deliberate, like he wanted to brand his name onto my soul in front of the entire pack. His lips moved against mine with slow, practiced heat. His palm splayed on my lower back. His tongue parted my lips like he'd dreamed of this moment forever. So I kissed him back. Sensually. Deliberately. I curled my fingers into his shirt, tilted my chin, and leaned into him like I meant every second of it. I wanted Brad to see it. I wanted him to burn in it. The crowd exploded into cheers, clapping, whistles, celebration. Except Brad. He didn't clap. He didn't smile. His eyes bore through me like I'd betrayed something sacred between us. His chest rose and fell too fast, and when our eyes locked, I saw it pure fury buried under heartbreak. And God, it satisfied something twisted in me. Let him feel what it's like to be silent when someone needed him the most. Elara arrived that afternoon with a bounce in her step and fire in her eyes. The Greystone estate's front gate barely closed before she was dragging her overnight bag across the polished marble floor like she owned the place.
Where's the bride-to-be?
She called out in that loud, musical voice of hers. I came down the stairs barefoot, my arms crossed over my chest, hair pulled into a messy low ponytail. Upstairs, I muttered, drowning in guilt. She took one look at me and groaned.
Girl, you look like a sad casserole.
Thanks, I said flatly, but it made me laugh just a little. We sat cross-legged on my bed, the canopy curtain falling in soft waves around us. Outside the window, the estate glowed golden in the late afternoon sun. Inside, I felt like a mess in slow motion. I don't know what I'm doing, Elle. I love Brad. I do. But he won't take a stand. He won't fight for me. And I'm too tired to be the only one fighting. Elara's smile faded.
You told him?
I nodded. Plenty of times. Her brows knitted, concern creeping into her voice.
Then we need to tell Jackson.
No, I said quickly. He just woke up from a coma, Lara. He's still weak. The doctor told me his heart rate spikes every time he gets too worked up. I can't drop this on him. Not yet. And definitely not alone. I need Brad's support. But he keeps choosing silence. Elara sighed and rubbed my arm.
So what's your move?
I didn't have one. Not yet. But Elara did. As the sun slipped lower and bathed the estate in a soft amber glow, we stood in front of my open closet, the scent of lavender and fresh linen hanging in the air. She held up a black silk dress, barely their straps, a daring slit up the thigh, plunging neckline. I raised an eyebrow. You're out of your mind. She grinned.
It's time to remind them both who they're messing with. Charm Jackson in front of Brad, make him feel it. Make him see you.
I stared at the dress, heart thudding. You want me to bait him?
I want you to control the room,
she said, holding the fabric up to my body.
Wear it, rave, look drop dead gorgeous. Let him sit with the silence for once.
So I did. By the time dinner rolled around, I felt like someone else. Someone powerful. Someone who didn't have to beg to be seen. The dress clung to every dip and curve like silk was meant to memorize me. My dark curls fell loose around my shoulders. A sweep of red stained my lips, and for the first time in a long time I looked like I knew the effect I had. The moment I stepped into the dining room, the conversation died. Mr. Greystone paused mid-pour of his wine. Lillian blinked, fork halfway to her mouth. Brad's eyes locked on me first, and he actually sat back in his chair. Tight jaw. Still hands. And Jackson? His gaze flickered down to the slit in my dress, then back up, like he didn't want to get caught staring, but couldn't help it. Everyone, I said casually, this is my best friend, Elara. Elara stepped in behind me with a confident little wave.
Hey, why all?
Jackson stood first, pulling out a chair beside him.
You look stunning, Raven.
I smiled. Thank you, Jackson. I could feel Brad's stare. It burned across the table, tracing the hollow of my collarbone, the line of my shoulder. But he said nothing. Elara leaned in, whispering behind her wine glass.
Brad's practically chewing that napkin.
I almost choked on my water. Dinner began. Candlelight flickered over crystal, the air thick with rosemary and garlic. Jackson was attentive, laughing, passing me the bread basket, his hand brushing mine every chance he got. His eyes softened every time they met mine. He served me seconds, leaning in close as he said,
I still can't believe you said yes.
The table broke into conversation about wedding arrangements. The ceremony was officially fixed for 1 week later. Lillian already had dressmakers lined up. Mr. Greystone talked about inviting some of the northern clans. Jackson's hand stayed close to mine on the table, our fingers brushing in secret touches. But Brad? He was silent. Every so often I'd catch him watching me. And not just watching, studying me. His hand flexed every time Jackson touched me. When I laughed at something Jackson said, he looked like he might throw the plate across the room. I kept my face calm. But my heart, it was wreckage. After dessert, Jackson stood and reached for my hand.
Walk with me?
He asked, his smile soft, unsure. I nodded, swallowing the ache in my chest. As he pulled me gently from my chair, as we stepped out into the hallway, his fingers slid between mine. Behind us, I knew Brad was still at the table. Watching. Always watching. Never moving. Jackson led me through the hallway, his hand warm over mine. He didn't say anything at first, just looked up at the moonlight spilling through the stained glass windows.
I used to dream of this.
He said suddenly.
Not the coma, but this part walking beside someone I thought was mine.
I couldn't answer him. My tongue felt leaden. He stopped near the staircase, turning to face me fully.
Ray, when I was unconscious, you were the only voice I heard. I'd follow that sound anywhere.
His thumb brushed over the back of my hand. It was gentle. Tender. My chest ached from how much I wanted to deserve that look in his eyes, but didn't. He leaned forward.
Do you feel it too?
My lips parted, but the words tangled in my throat. I didn't want to lie, but the truth would break him. Then Ilara's voice echoed in my head like a dare.
Make him jealous.
Before I could second-guess it, before the ache in my chest could harden into guilt, I turned and crashed my lips against Jackson's. I felt the moment his body stiffened from surprise, then melted against mine like candle wax. His hand shot up, gripping my waist with instinct and something far more desperate. He pulled me in closer, anchoring me to him, his kiss deepening like he needed to memorize me all over again. My fingers tangled in his thick, dark hair as his mouth moved against mine with heat, not hesitation. I let the kiss linger, let it swell with something reckless, dangerous, performative. But even as I lied with my lips, I couldn't stop the tears burning behind my eyes. Jackson pulled back, his forehead resting gently against mine.
Are you sure?
He asked, breathless, his eyes searching mine like he was scared to hope. I nodded. Not because I was sure, but because I wanted Brad to see. Because I needed him to feel it. Jackson's arm slid under my thighs, and with one smooth motion, he scooped me up. The world tilted as he carried me toward the east wing of the estate, my pulse pounding in my ears louder than my heels clicking against the hardwood hallway. He kicked his bedroom door shut with his boot, not bothering with subtlety. The click of the lock slid home behind us, final and sharp. The room was dim-lit only by moonlight pouring in through tall windows, turning the space into something sacred. The shadows painted silver patterns across the floor, touching the bed, the desk, the dark shelves stacked with books and pieces of his old life. Jackson didn't stop to ask again. He set me down on the edge of his heavy oak desk, the wood cool against the back of my thighs through the slit in my dress. Rough, rushed, his hands found my knees, parted them instinctively, and stepped in. His mouth was on mine again, urgent, shaky like he was holding back more than just desire. His lips trailed down my neck, hot and open-mouthed, until they reached the collar of my blouse. He tugged the sleeves down, first one shoulder, then the other, his hands reverent but shaking, his touch making my skin bloom with goosebumps. I arched into him, breath catching as his mouth brushed the dip of my collarbone. The tension between us could have burned down the damn estate. His voice was low, broken.
You're mine. You've always been mine, Raven.
And maybe I could have let myself believe that lie just for a second. But then... a knock. Then the slow, awful creak of the door opening. I froze. Footsteps, measured. Heavy. Brad. I didn't have to turn to know it was him. His presence hit the room like a thunderclap, silent and violent all at once. The air turned to static. My spine went stiff, my hands still on Jackson's chest. Brad's voice was calm, too calm, like the surface of a frozen lake.
Jackson,
He said, eyes never leaving mine.
Dad's looking for you. Something about the guest list.
Jackson pulled away slightly, chuckling under his breath.
Of course he is.
He muttered, running a hand through his slicked back hair.
He probably wants to invite half of North Carolina.
I couldn't breathe. Jackson kissed my cheek softly, tender and too real. Too wrong. My fingers gripped his shirt a second longer, long enough for Brad to see it. Long enough to make sure the message landed. Brad's gaze locked with mine. And it cut. No words, no yelling, but his silence screamed through my bones. That cool blue stare of his, always calm, always collected, looked ready to split wide open. Good, you should see this, you should feel this. Come back soon, sweetheart. I called after Jackson, my voice sing-song and syrupy sweet. Jackson paused at the door, smiling back at me like he thought we were the only two people in the world.
I will.
And then he was gone. The second the door clicked shut, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Maybe not in the room, but inside me. My chest felt hollow, like the silence between us had sucked out all the air. Brad didn't move at first. Then he stepped forward, the sound of his boots scraping against the marble. His jaw was tight, his lips thin to a silent storm.
What the hell are you doing, Raven?
He asked, voice low but sharp. I stood up from the desk slowly, tugging the sleeves of my blouse back over my shoulders like I was trying to cover more than just skin. My chest ached. Not from the kiss, not even from the guilt, but from the weight of everything we weren't saying. The heaviness in the air felt like it could crush bone. What's wrong? I asked, voice sharp, defiant. I was with my husband. I meant it to hurt. And it did. Brad flinched like I'd struck him across the face. His jaw flexed, lips parting just enough to let out a growl of a breath. His fists clenched at his sides.
You were trying to charm him.
He spat.
Wearing that kind of dress. You knew what you were doing.
I laughed, a bitter, disbelieving sound that bounced off the stone walls. Come on, brother-in-law, I taunted, my chin lifting high. He's my husband. I have every right. Brad's eyes darkened, turning stormy with something between pain and rage.
Brother-in-law?
He repeated, voice dropping like a hammer. Yeah, I said, folding my arms across my chest like armor. That's what you call your husband's brother. His movements were sudden, sharp, dangerous. He stepped forward so fast, so close, that his chest brushed against mine. His arms caged me in, palms slamming against the desk on either side of my hips. I was surrounded by his heat, his scent, cedar, sweat, and anger.
Don't you dare call me that.
He hissed. Then his mouth crashed into mine. There was no softness, no hesitation, just fire. His hands tangled in my hair, yanking it just enough to tilt my head back so he could devour me whole. His lips moved like they'd been waiting for this moment his entire life, like he was trying to pull every lie, every betrayal, every buried truth straight from my mouth. When he pulled away, breath ragged, his eyes locked onto mine, wild, glassy, starving.
Will you say that again?
He asked. His voice was hoarse, daring, broken. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My heart was beating so loud I was sure it'd echo off the walls. He grabbed my arms, not rough, but firm enough to shake me to my soul.
Say it, Raven.
He growled.
Say you don't love me.
My jaw trembled. Tears brimmed in my eyes.
Say it.
he shouted. His mouth found my collarbone, then soft now, desperate. His lips brushed against my skin like an apology. A plea.
You don't love me.
He whispered again, like he needed me to lie just to survive. I do, I cried, shoving at his chest. But what's the point, Brad? Huh? I shoved him again, hard enough that he stumbled back a step. You can't stand for me, you won't. You asked me to get engaged to Jackson, remember? You said it was for the family, you said I was helping. His face shattered in front of me, piece by piece. And now? I choked. Now I'm just adjusting, trying to breathe in a life that doesn't even belong to me. He took a step forward again, voice steel.
So you want me to tell my family I love you? Right here, right now? You know the consequences, Raven.
His eyes blazed, every inch of his body trembling with restrained violence.
My father would die.
He snapped.
Jackson, he'd spiral. Maybe even go back into a coma. Is that what you want?
I stood frozen, hurt, drowning in guilt and fury. Then his hand shot out and gripped mine.
Fine.
He said, yanking the door open.
Then come with me. Let's do this.
Brad, I gasped, trying to pull back. But the hallway light spilled in. And there, standing tall, pale, with fury carved across his features, was Jackson. He had heard everything. His fists clenched at his sides, knuckles white. His breath was shallow, chest rising and falling like he'd been punched in the gut. Brad dropped my hand.
Jackson.
He breathed. But Jackson didn't let him finish. His hand whipped out slap, cracking across Brad's cheek with a sound that made my heart seize in my chest. The silence afterward was deafening.
You think?
Jackson said, voice trembling with more pain than anger.
That you could sacrifice your love for us, and no one would ever know.
He turned to me. His eyes, usually warm and teasing, were sharp and aching.
And you, Raven.
His voice cracked.
You couldn't tell me? I thought we were friends.
My eyes stung with tears. We are, I whispered. Jackson, I didn't mean to.
Stop.
He said.
Just stop.
His voice wasn't loud, but it was final. He stepped back into the hallway, brushing a hand through his hair like he was trying to stay upright.
You both are coming with me. Now.
He said quietly. We followed without a word. The walls of the estate felt tighter with every step, the air too thick to swallow. My heels clicked against the marble floor like a countdown. Each footfall hurt. Each breath dragged. Jackson didn't speak again. Not as we walked down the corridor. Not when we passed portraits of ancestors with eyes that seemed to judge. Not even when we reached the parlor doors. But I could feel the storm building. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't sure if any of us were going to make it out without bleeding. Mr. Greystone and Lillian were seated together on the tufted cream settee near the fireplace, his reading glasses perched low on his nose, her hands folded in her lap, worry tucked in the lines around her eyes. They were talking softly, their voices just a hum under the crackling fire and the distant sound of a clock ticking on the wall. I stood just beyond the threshold, my heart thudding like it might knock me right back down the hallway. Jackson stepped in first, his shoulders stiff beneath the pressed lines of his button-up shirt. His jaw clenched with purpose, but there was a flicker of nerves in his eyes. Brad followed silently behind him, unreadable. And I trailed last, arms crossed, blouse still wrinkled from everything that had just happened, my heart still raw and stinging. Alara's heels clicked softly as she joined us from the other side of the hall, sliding beside Jackson like she belonged in this moment too. Mr. Greystone looked up, removing his glasses.
What is it, son?
He asked, glancing from Jackson to Brad to me, his brow creased.
Dad,
Jackson said, voice steady but tight.
I need to tell you something.
Mr. Greystone set the glasses on the table beside him.
Say it.
Jackson swallowed hard, then exhaled.
That night, the night you all thought I was running off with Caroline, I wasn't. Not really, I was supposed to. I had my bag, my heart, everything packed. But Caroline never came.
Lillian gasped softly. Mr. Greystone leaned forward.
I stood there waiting for her, calling her over and over. She didn't pick up. No text. Nothing. It was like the earth just swallowed her up.
He paused, eyes glossy.
I felt like a fool. Like the last kid standing at the altar of hope. So I left. Drove until the world blurred, ended up at those train tracks. I was going to end it.
My breath caught in my chest.
But then Raven found me.
He continued, his voice softer now.
She didn't know me, didn't owe me a damn thing. But she saved me. And after that, she didn't walk away, she stayed. She changed my IVs, washed my face, cared for me when I couldn't even open my eyes. She did it for you, Dad, so you wouldn't hurt.
He looked at me then, and there was something in his eyes that broke my heart a little, a quiet kind of respect, edged with sorrow.
Brad helped her settle into the estate. He trained her, protected her family. He helped her survive here, in this world none of us really invited her into. And while I lay there in that bed, I heard everything, every word she thought I couldn't.
Mr. Greystone turned to me stunned. Lillian's hand covered her mouth.
I thought she was my mate when I woke up.
Jackson said.
I felt that pull. But I never noticed what was right in front of me. The way Brad looked at her. The way he fought Patrick like she was his to lose. I was so caught up in what I wanted that I missed what they had. And that's on me.
The room fell silent. Even the fire crackled softer, like it was holding its breath.
Dad.
Jackson's voice broke.
Does it really matter if Raven marries me or Brad? Isn't love the point?
Mr. Greystone stood slowly. He didn't speak right away, just stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. I could barely breathe. He stopped in front of me, his expression softening, then lifted a hand to gently cut my cheek.
You saved my boy.
He said.
You saved this family, and you never asked for anything in return.
Tears stung behind my eyes.
You did all that and still stayed quiet about who you loved.
He whispered. I nodded, lips trembling. It didn't feel like my story to tell. Lillian stepped beside him, brushing my hair back from my face. Her perfume, lavender and rain, made my chest tighten.
Why didn't you tell us, dear?
She asked, voice gentle.
You did so much for us. You deserve to be with the man you choose.
I turned to Brad. He was watching me like I was the only thing left in the world that mattered. And maybe, in that moment, I was.
The wedding?
Mr. Greystone said.
Let it stay on the same date. But this time, with the right names.
Brad and Raven.
Lillian confirmed, turning toward the others.
That's the marriage we'll celebrate.
A beat passed. Then,
I want to say something.
Alara piped up, stepping forward with that same fearless gleam she always had in her eyes. All eyes turned to her. She looked straight at Jackson.
I like you,
she said.
I want you. I have for a while. And I don't care that it's messy or sudden. It's real. I want to stay with you.
Jackson blinked once, then again. Then something lit behind his eyes, and he smiled. A real one. Lillian laughed soft and watery. Mr. Greystone grinned and clapped Jackson on the back.
Well then.
Lillian beamed, wiping under her eye.
It's settled. Brad, you're marrying Raven,
she said.
And Jackson, you're marrying Alara.
My breath caught again, but this time in relief. Brad reached for my hand, fingers intertwining with mine like it was always supposed to be that way. And Jackson, he stepped beside Alara, wrapping an arm around her waist like he finally let go of something he'd been clinging to for too long. The light from the chandelier glinted off the polished floor as laughter, whispers, and quiet tears filled the room like music. But all I could feel standing there in the heart of a family I once lied to was peace, and Brad's thumb gently stroking the back of my hand. I kicked off my heels with a sigh, letting them tumble beneath the edge of the bed. The moment the door clicked shut behind us, my whole body slumped like my bones were finally allowed to feel the weight of everything. Alara flopped down beside me with a dramatic groan, grabbing a throw pillow and hugging it to her chest.
Well, that was a twist.
I looked over at her, my lip twitching. A twist? Girl, that was a full-blown novella. She laughed, but it faded fast. The room settled into something quiet, something sacred. The kind of hush that falls only between two best friends who've seen the ugliest parts of each other and stayed anyway. I leaned back against the headboard, staring up at the ceiling like it might spell out answers. You really love him? Alara didn't answer right away. I turned my head, caught her soft smile. Since when? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. When did you fall for Jackson? She shifted onto her side, her dark waves falling around her face as she looked at me.
The first time you told me about him.
I blinked. What? She nodded slowly.
That night you called me from the hospital. You were all flustered talking about this man in a tux who tried to end his life on train tracks. You said he looked like something out of a movie, but what got me wasn't the drama. It was the way you described him.
My breath caught.
You said he was broken.
She went on.
But still, he looked like he had this kind of fierce hope. You told me he was waiting for someone who never showed, that he'd rather die than live unloved.
Alara paused, fingers fidgeting with the tassel on the pillow. Her voice dropped, softer now, confessional.
The man who could love someone that much even when she didn't love him back. That kind of man doesn't come around every day.
My chest tightened. She looked at me again.
Just imagine,
she said.
If a man like that gets a woman who truly loves him back, what he could do for her, how he could love her.
I swallowed hard. And you think you're that woman? Alara's gaze didn't waver.
I know I am.
The silence that followed didn't feel heavy. It felt full.
You think it's too fast?
She asked. I let out a dry chuckle. Girl, I faked and engaged for 3 weeks, kissed 2 brothers, and almost started a pack war by falling in love with the wrong Greystone. I am not the one to judge. That made her laugh, really laugh, until her eyes teared up, and she curled into herself on the bed.
You're not wrong.
She wheezed.
We're such a mess.
I smiled through the ache in my chest. Yeah, but somehow it feels like we landed right where we were supposed to. The storm outside tapped against the windows like a lullaby. We didn't say anything else for a while. Just laid there, surrounded by the scent of rain and old wood, curled in matching robes, legs tangled on opposite sides of the bed, like when we were kids sharing a mattress too small for 2 dreams. But this wasn't a dream anymore. This was real. And tomorrow I'd wake up one step closer to a wedding that might actually be for love this time.